the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan on July the 4th delivered a powerful message called the Criterion, in which he warned us, not to take the vaccine. And one of the reasons, of course, behind that, and one of the reasons why Black people are so hesitant, rightfully so, of getting the vaccine is because there's a long, long history. And I'll say that really that history began when our feet first touched the soils of North America, that this history of experimenting on Black people began, and really with our first contact with the Europeans. So today we have talking with us Professor Taylor Curtis, MA, and she is the African American Studies Program Director and Assistant Professor of Psychology in the Psychology Department at Sinclair Community College. And I would like to welcome you on to the show. Sister Taylor, how are you doing today?
I am doing so good to be here. I am dealing with some health issues, so I think this is a great topic to talk about, and I'll share a little bit about that. But aside from that, I am doing well.
Yeah, because you told me you had some a surgery going up, and I didn't want to get into any private issues, but sure, if you could, if you could talk a little bit about that, because I think it falls directly in line with what we're talking about, because a lot of us as Black people, particularly Black men, right, that we're afraid of going to the hospital. We already have that machismo, right, that we don't want to get any type of help for any medical hurt, aches, or pains. But then on top of that, in the back of our mind, we're thinking that if we go into this hospital, we'll be coming out. And today we're hearing a lot of stories about people who are going in for one issue and then end up catching the COVID-19 coronavirus and not coming out. So tell us a little bit about yourself, and we'll go ahead and get right on into this important topic.
Yeah, well, okay. So in my experience, and which is an experience that I think a lot of women of color share, I had my first fibroid tumor diagnosed when I was about 19 years old. In my experience, medical health was important, but the history of my family wasn't necessarily something that had been passed down, at least not explicitly. I think that was one thing that I can say we didn't do as well of. I knew maybe immediate family, like my mother and my father, what kind of medical history they might have had, but not necessarily things that are generational, and things that we see throughout the family. And for me, I thought that having a doctor that would understand me and listen to me and hear me would be so important. But in my experience, I had a Black woman that was my doctor, and I thought, wow, this must be like, okay, everything's going to be great. This is going to be a great situation. But in reality, my doctor did not listen to me. And so she wasn't really hearing me and hearing my complaints about my issues and my pains and things like that. And so even in asking about my fibroid tumor and making sure that we are checking up on it and monitoring the process and the growth and making sure that we're knowing what's happening and how that might impact fertility, I thought that I wasn't being heard and wasn't being listened to. And then when the pandemic hit, I am high risk. I have asthma and I have some other issues, autoimmune issues and things like that. And so I absolutely did not want to go to a hospital just to go to a regular doctor checkup. And I could not find an alternative. There was no alternative because my doctor's office was located in a hospital. And because there was no alternative, I decided to stop seeing that doctor. I felt like I wasn't being listened to. They were giving me the runaround and things like that, leaving me in the waiting room for hours, and you're in surgery. I mean, all kinds of things were happening. And I thought, if I looked different, would my treatment be like this? Even though the doctor looks like me, if I look different, would my treatment be different? And I went to another doctor And upon first arrival, that doctor was able to determine that I had some more serious issues going on, and got me into an ultrasound and started making arrangements. And within 2 months, I was scheduled for surgery,
Mm.
which will take place at the end of this month. And this particular issue I have is called endometriosis, and it's a common issue that we
Right.
see in women of color. And a lot of times it goes undetected because it can't be scanned for, and
Mm.
because you can't see it physically through a X-ray or an ultrasound. You have to actually have severe symptoms, and typically they find it during surgery. And
Mm.
so I know so many young women of color who've had the symptoms, but because they don't know how to advocate for themselves in the healthcare field, they're talking to doctors who are not doing the extra work and taking the extra step to determine what's
Mhm.
going on. And because of
Right.
that, that could cause infertility. I mean, and it's something that we see, as a chance, because the endometriosis is basically what we have inside of us to prepare a baby that women usually experience dispelling every month. That is growing inside the womb and outside the womb, and there's nowhere for it to dispel if it's outside of the womb. And so it can attach to different parts of the womb, and then therefore cause the woman to be infertile. And so I can only imagine how had I continued at the doctor I was at, the rate at which my condition could have gotten worse and how that could impact me. Even
Right.
now, we still have no clarity as to what the extent of my condition is, and there's still no guarantee that fertility is even possible, but there's no guarantee that it isn't. And if we catch it early, we have the opportunity to prevent further issues. And I think, again, what we see commonly is that issue of not being heard. And
Mm.
because we aren't heard and don't know how to advocate for ourselves, a lot of times it leads to further complications or further health issues, or the lack of our health education in a way that will prevent us from having some of these issues that we often think are even due to our culture. Um, Things like diabetes, things like high
Right.
blood pressure, things like heart disease. These things are not because of being Black. We
Right.
think of them as Black diseases, but they come oftentimes because of circumstances and because of things passed on through the generations, and because of the way that our society has been systemically impacted by racism. And it is those things that lead to the impact of mortality in the Black community, for sure.
Be a part of the force that powers truth in journalism. Your support helps to combat false media. Cash App NNV News.
Let's have a discussion. People have questions. They would like answers. Let's talk about the issues. Confront the things that may be difficult to address. The Black narrative.